Baseball podcast. Although we just talked a couple of days ago, Matt, we are at no shortage of notable news and notes across Major League Baseball, headlined by perhaps two of the biggest stars in the game on the same team who both got injured on Wednesday night. But before we talk about Mr. Shohei Ohtani, the I guess now potential future $500 million man, we'll talk about that and Mike Trout being injured. Matt, let me talk to you first here over on X at the Selz man. How is everything going for you, my friend?
Everything is good. I mean, I'm not an Angels fan, so there's that. But I did want to throw a shout out to Stone Garrett of the Washington Nationals, who got injured trying to rob DJ LeMahieu of a home run on Wednesday night, and his ankle looked like his cleat caught in the padding of the wall, and his ankle just kind of went down while the rest of his leg stayed where, yeah, it bent in a weird way. My man was having a good season. So hopefully he comes back and is good to go. But it doesn't look like it's going to be anytime soon that he's back.
He was very good of late too. He was a sneaky little ad, especially if he was still out there. You could get a little production here over the past couple of weeks.
He was
But
a 2.1 B-WAR player this year.
yep. And now I doubt we see. I don't want to be pessimistic, but I doubt we see him. That didn't
No,
look good.
I mean, they didn't say it was an ankle. They said it was a lower leg, but I'm guessing it involves where the tibia and fibula reached the ankle and some stuff got screwed up.
Yep, did not look good for Stone Garrett. So we may need some outfielder replacements. So make sure you check the waiver wire. We do have the waiver wire article over at fantasyalarm.com, which you can check out for maybe that replacement outfielder that you'll need for Stone Garrett. But Matt, let's talk about the Angels here. Simply put, Ohtani left to start, I believe it was in the second inning.
Yeah, it was after 4 outs.
Originally, it was classified as arm fatigue.
Yes.
A few hours later, it became a torn UCL.
Yeah.
So
his velo was down significantly in that start. Yeah.
I'm very confident in this because the team basically also said it. We will not see him on the mound in 2023. That's correct. That is over with. It seems like there may be a chance he tries to keep playing offensively.
Well, he hit in game 2 of the doubleheader.
Correct.
So he started game 1. They took him out after 1 1/3 innings. He went and got an MRI, found out he had a torn UCL, and then battled his way to be in the lineup for game 2 so he could DH. And, did decently well. I mean, he hit a home run in the first at bat of game 1 before we knew he had the torn UCL. But it's not like we haven't seen this before from Shohei. Right? Like in 2018, thereabouts, he tore the UCL and DH'd until he got it fixed or while he was rehabbing, right? And then the following season is when we saw him back on the mound. But I want to ask you, what do you think this does to his free agency at this point?
I think it adds some question marks.
Like, obviously, NL teams can use him as a DH. We all know the NL has DHs. The Phillies just had Bryce Harper play DH all of the second half of last year with a torn UCL. Couldn't throw the ball, but he DH'd. Now they're having him play first base now that he's done rehabbing. But you're not getting Shohei just to stick him in DH and eat that spot for you, right? You were getting Shohei because he's a double threat like no one we've ever seen. Do you think he's a $500 million bat?
I mean,
Aaron Judge
could make the case.
Aaron Judge isn't a $500 million bat.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's tougher to put. So ultimately, I think what's going to end up happening is I still think teams are almost going to have to pay that because the Ohtani team is going to say, like, other pitchers have come back from UCL injuries and have been just fine. You know what I mean?
But yeah.
Correct. Well, technically, if you really
want to, he's not. We don't know if he's going for surgery yet.
Correct. But there's still the thing of, like, yeah, multiple UCL injuries. People come back from Tommy John. They pitch just fine. And even if Ohtani is not quite, I don't want to say a shell of himself because that's not quite it, but like a 75% Ohtani is still a what, top 3 starter in most rotations. Like, that seems fair, right? Like a number
Right, but
starter.
here's the question: like, are you getting, because now it's the second UCL, so now you've got to be concerned about innings load going forward, right? Because guys have come back from a second UCL, but they're never the same guy. They're like an innings eating. I can't even say innings eating because they usually work less innings at like a middling ERA.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what you're getting. That's what you. But the other thing to be interested in is what does it do to the length of the contract?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's going to be
Like we saw people backing out of Carlos Correa's fictitious leg, ankle, knee, hip issue that may or may not cause a problem 7 years down the road.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have this guy who has a broken wing, basically, can't throw, and I don't know how you sign him to a decade-long contract.
So this may be apples to oranges, but when looking at it, the Rangers, again, apples to oranges, so bear with me. The Rangers gave Jacob deGrom a ton of money, and he's thrown 156 innings since the end of the 2020 season. He's had just as many arm issues. Again, it's apples to oranges. Comparing Ohtani's instance to any other pitcher it's not quite fair. But
Right,
like that's what I'm saying. Like these injury concerns, the Yankees, as dumb as they are, they gave Rodon a bunch of money. He's had injuries. He had one healthy year, and he got the bag. I think a team's gonna have I think they're gonna have to pay up to find out what version of Ohtani it's gonna be on the mound in the future. His bat enough is going to play. Is his bat alone 500? Probably not, but I still think there's a very legitimate chance he's going to get the 500 million because the team is going to say these guys have come back. Look at these past deals. Ohtani's been healthier than Jacob deGrom, and look at the money he got as a pitcher, and look what he's done this year in checks notes 6 starts. Like,
right, but like that's the thing is now you're starting to see. Okay, so deGrom got the bag, but everybody assumes that was a stupid deal, right? Everybody's already assuming the Carlos Rodon deal is stupid, right?
but to get those guys, you're going to have to pay it.
I mean, at this point, the Chris Sale deal looks pretty stupid.
Mm-hmm.
So, Kershaw is sitting here going, well, I've got as many issues as them, and I just keep signing 1-year deals.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not going to give Ohtani a 1-year deal, right? You're not giving him a 1-year, $87 million contract, right?
Right.
But what I think this does is I think this helps the Angels keep him. I really do. Because the Angels can say, we're going to give you this money, but we're going to backload it so it's after the horrifyingly bad Rendon money falls off the books, right? Yeah. And we're going to backload it so that we're done paying the Pujols deferred money, whatever, right?
Right.
And we're going to backload it so that you and Trout are the only two dudes drawing salaries at that point. And we know how to rehab you to get you back to an MVP caliber because we did it once. And you're familiar with us. You can still get all of your sponsorship deals in place. Like, I don't know how many teams are going to sign an injured dude knowing that he needs Tommy John to be the full extent of himself and then be willing to give up a year and a half to let that happen. Because here's the thing. If he gets surgery this offseason, how does he rebuild his innings while he's still expected to DH full time? It's not like Bryce Harper DH'd full time, but he didn't have to go and get an innings load in, right? Walker Buehler underwent it, and he's theoretically coming back this month, but he didn't have to go get at bats or still DH. All he had to do was sit there and work on pitching. So I think this is an interesting case where it may actually help the Angels keep him. Now, for those of you who are saying it was stupid for the Angels to not trade him, No. Sorry. Still don't believe that.
Hindsight's 2020, though. It's hard.
Right.
It's hard to
Like
say that.
every life decision you go through, you can come back and go, oh, well, gee, I should have done that, which is why it's called hindsight's 2020, because you know how the ending plays out.
Yeah.
But they weren't going to get the haul that the Nats got for Juan Soto. Even if they traded him a year ago, they wouldn't have gotten that haul because everybody in baseball realizes that was a really stupid deal. Like, the Padres gave the Nats an entire farm system for one guy who took a year and a half to get used to a year to get used to his surrounding. Plus, the Angels are still the only team that can negotiate with him until the end of the season.
What if it turns out that he ends up, let's say he needs Tommy John.
Yes.
Part of me has this weird suspicion they may try to avoid the Tommy John surgery and do like that platelet injection and try and go from there. But let's just say for the sake of this, he needs Tommy John.
Yeah.
He doesn't pitch this year, doesn't pitch next year. So now we're looking at 2025. What if the Angels basically say, we'll meet you in the middle, in quotation marks, if you're just listening to this and not seeing it, in quotation marks, and say, we'll do a 4 or 5 year deal. You get a player option year 4 or 5, whatever, if you want to leave early. That puts you at 33 or 34 years old. That'll allow you to cash in on the market one more time afterwards. But we keep you for, say, 4 years. Basically, we're going to throw away next year, play for 2025, 2026, and 2027. So we're going to get 3 more years, essentially 3, because next year they're going to stink if he gets Tommy John.
I mean, yeah.
But that's 3 more years of Ohtani. He still gets a good bit of money. He stays with the team. It gives them a little more time. And like you said, kick the money down the line, get out from underneath Rendon, out from underneath Pujols, and then make 2025, 2026, and 2027 your years that you are going for it. And then if it doesn't work, trade Ohtani then.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that might be the best way to keep him. Because at this point, if you don't, like, at this point, are the Angels scarred from long-term deals? Like the Trout one, he's just been injured a good bit. Obviously, the Pujols one, yikes. And the Rendon one, yikes. So, like, maybe they're scarred and just say, let's meet you in the middle. We're going to help us help you. 5 years, help us, because we're going to basically still pay you while you're rehabbing and maybe hitting in the second part of the year.
Right.
But we're going to help you by allowing you to cash in one more time at 33 or 34. Because if you come out and dominate 2026 and 2027 healthy, you're going to get one last big final contract for your career. And that'll take you into this as you ride into the sunset.
Yeah, I think it's perfectly feasible.
Now, will he sign that? That's the other question. But
well, I guess the question is anybody offering longer than that? Is some team going to be stupid enough to offer him a 12-year deal?
Correct. And that's something that you
because
don't
at
know.
This point, I don't know that anybody is convinced that he can stay healthy for an entire, like, that you can get the value out of him out of a 12-year deal.
I mean, that would take him right now till his early 40s.
Yeah, I mean, 10-year deal, whatever.
And at what point you give him the unicorn deal, right? For 12 years. What if he's only a hitter when he's 35? What if he's only a pitcher when he's 35? Although I'm very confident that won't be the case. But you know what I'm saying? Like, what if he ends up going one way or the other? You now have a super expensive
DH
one-way player. Yeah, potentially a DH.
Actually, you're not going to put him in the field. I mean, he could play outfield, but you're not going to put him there.
Well, don't tell DraftKings that, because you can still put him at like first base and outfield in DraftKings. So I think it's at least first base. I'm pretty sure it's outfield too. But yeah, this as interesting and as fun as the contract negotiations in the offseason were already going to be,
things got a lot more interesting.
Not the fun part. The interesting got vastly increased. But also in that game too, don't want to. It's weird to. By the way, Trout also here, injured Mike Trout. Yep. So he's back on the IL. So in our show sheet here, I have Angels dead ? Did
you hear what it was? Because I haven't heard what the
left hand.
So it wasn't ready yet, and they rushed him back to try to.
It's kind of.
I mean, I still don't disagree with what they did at the deadline. You have to make the run. You have to give your fans something to root for.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's gone south.
Yeah.
In an abysmal way. All of your stuff hasn't worked in the Crosstown Dodgers. Every one of their trades worked.
Yep.
But I still don't blame him. Yeah, I don't know. I don't bring Trout back the rest of the year.
Yeah, and I'm looking here over at CBS Sports, where article written by Adam Silverstein. Headline is just Angels star Mike Trout returns to injured list one day after returning from 7-week absence. So that encapsulates it. They rushed him back, trying to make something out of nothing, and now they're just double screwed.
Yep.
So it'll be very interesting to see what happens here in the offseason with Ohtani, and I'm sure there will be no shortage of conversation about it. I'm sure we'll still be talking about him. It'll be very interesting for fantasy managers. Will they still have the bat in the coming days? That will be very interesting to see too. But we'll see. Could you imagine an Angels lineup without Trout or Ohtani in it? Like down the stretch?
Haven't we seen it every year for like the last 5 years?
True. But I assume, on every Friday show we do the weekend streamers. I'm assuming now our default's going to be who plays the
Whoever's
Angels.
pitching against the Angels.
Is that pitcher lower owned? There's our streamer for the week. But we have a streamer this week. We'll talk about it at the end of the show. But it's Friday as you are listening to this. So it is time to go down on the farm with Matt Selz. So, Matt, a couple of prospects here, although a couple of these guys I have here, I guess you could kind of consider post-hype, kind of, just because it seems like some of the shine has come off of these guys. But Michael Busch, I believe around the trade deadline, one of the Farm Fridays we did, talked about him to you. And I believe you had said you would like to see him get traded, if I don't remember, just to open up playing time.
Because I don't know what else this guy has to do to prove that. Yeah. I mean, I wrote it up again this week in this week's prospect report because Michael Busch came up because JD Martinez is injured on the IL. So apparently having your DH get injured allows you to call up a second baseman. But Michael Busch has been crushing AAA pitching for, more than a season now. He played 111 games at AAA last year. Prior to the call-up this year, he played 80-something, I think 85, 88 games. Mm-hmm. The slash line is amazing. The power is there. Steals, okay, but he's not really known for speed, right? He'll get you a handful of steals in a season. But in the 190 or so games, he's got like 40-plus homers, 6 steals. He's hitting over 300. Mm-hmm. He's walking a lot, playing competent defense. I don't know what else he needs to do. And to be honest, I'm not sure anything clears up next year when they get some injured guys back. Because remember, they lost key offensive bat in spring training that everybody seems to be forgetting about now, but he'll be back. Yep. And then what do they do with Michael Busch? I don't know. But right now, you got to play him, man. The guy's going to hit. I know he hasn't done that quite so well in the majors right now, but can you blame him? He got like 4 days and then got sent back to Tulsa.
The big thing is just, and part of it, I think, too, goes with what you said of like, you got to give him a chance to establish some sort of a rhythm.
Yep.
The strikeouts are just off the charts. He's got to cut that down. But when you look at his track record in the minors, like, sure, he peaked at double and triple A in like the mid 20%. He's not a strikeout a third of the time type guy that we've seen in the big leagues. It's just hard. It's one of those things where it's like, how can you expect him to get in a rhythm? You give him 6 at-bats, and then he sits for 3 days. Or then he goes, now he's got to travel to where the minor league team is, go dominate there, establish some confidence, travel again, big league pitching, gets 3 at-bats to prove himself. Like, I just don't know what can the guy do? You know what I mean? Like, give him a chance. Like, and it seems like they're going to now. Obviously, the power is legit. He can make good contact. We've seen it, although it hasn't happened at the major league level yet. For fantasy managers down the stretch here, he's pretty much just a flyer, right? Hope that with some consistent playing time, he kind of puts it together. But he's one that you're probably not going to be too married to in redraft leagues.
Correct. You're going to ride the hot streak, and then if he doesn't do anything, then you drop him. By the way, I'm looking at the Dodgers lineup, and how more left-handed could you possibly get in the lineup right now? Do you realize that the Dodgers in their normal lineup right now only have 3 right-handed hitters?
Yep.
Betts, Will Smith, and Miguel Rojas.
Everybody else is lefty.
Everybody else is lefty, and not even a switch hitter, just straight up. Straight up lefty. Yeah, Gavin Lux, by the way, is the guy that I name blanked on, who was going to be the starting shortstop who tore his ACL in spring training.
Yep. He was a guy I liked until that happened too.
So when he comes back, I have no idea what they do.
Trade him for a healthy arm.
Maybe. I just feel bad for Michael Busch. He's gifted, but also has the gift of being in the deepest farm system on the planet, and a team that just likes to plug and play everybody else over him for some reason.
Down in the farm system in Chicago, there's a couple of big names. Like I know that young arm, that Cade Horton guy's in the minors there, and he's looked pretty good. But any chance before the end of the season we see some other notable prospects for them, namely PCA, Pete Crow Armstrong, such a cool name, by the way, and or Jordan Wicks. Any chance we see either of those two dudes by the end of the season?
I think we've got a shot. I think it's probably better for Pete Crow Armstrong, who's putting together a pretty good year at AAA. He's been he was one of the Mets prospects they gave up when they they made one of those trades that their fan base hates. Kalenic went in one trade and PCA went in another trade, and they all spazzed, and nobody's cared since. I think there's a pretty decent shot that we see PCA. Remember, September 1st coming up next week. Rosters expand to 28, and only one of those spots can be taken up by a pitcher. One has to be a hitter. So pretty decent shot. We see PCA get some life going back, and like they're fighting for a wild card spot. So any life that they can pump into that offense is a good sign. Jordan Wicks. There's also Ben Brown. So Cade Horton is their top pitching prospect for the Cubs, but he's in the low minors still. So there's no chance we see him this year. Ben Brown is probably their second best. For me, like Ben Brown and Jordan Wicks are pretty close. They're both at AAA, but Ben Brown has had a little bit more control issues at AAA. His strikeout to walk ratio is not as good as Jordan Wicks is at AAA. So I think with the Stroman, I don't know when he's going to be back routine, we could see Jordan Wicks come up and make a shot. Now, he's a solid pitcher. He's not an ace caliber guy. He's not a frontline starter. He's a mid-rotation guy who can eat innings and get strikeouts. And that's perfectly fine for fantasy. If he comes up, if you need pitching help, take a shot. But like he's not an Andrew Abbott. He's not, a Taj Bradley. He's a solid arm.
Yep. And then kind of post-type guy, rather maybe the definition of a post-hype guy here in the month of August, Spencer Torkelson, 8 home runs, up to 23 homers on the year. Kind of similar to Michael Busch in that like the batting average and like the contact rate is not where you would expect it to be for a guy like Tork, because when he came up, the thought was big power, but also bat to ball ability, very, very good. He's not a 235 hitter like we've seen this year from him. When it comes to a guy like Tork, at this point, based on the strong August, what he's put forth this year, he's finally done a little bit in the power department. Do you think he has finally figured it out, despite the fact that he is hitting 235, but his expecting batting average is up at like 263? So simply put, has Tork finally figured it out?
I think he's starting to. Yeah, I don't think it's helped his development that he came up pretty quickly. He was a very quick riser. I mean, they drafted him because he was the best college bat in the draft. He had like a 70 grade hit tool and pretty decent pop, but it seems like things have flipped a little bit there. It's taken him a little while longer. So when he first came up, there was not a lot of support in that lineup. I mean, there's still arguably not that much support in the lineup.
I was going to say there's not much still.
But some guys just take a while. Like you hear scouts and GMs and managers will say, "Oh, I don't want a guy who comes up before he's had 500 at bats and in the upper minors, or X number of at bats at each level, because it takes that long to get used to that level, the pitchers that you're seeing, the routine, the talent level, the park, all that stuff." That's the case here. He's had enough at bats at the majors. He's starting to figure it out. So, going forward, do I see him being like a 300 hitter next year? No. But is he capable of being like a 270 hitter for the season? Sure. He's got enough pop to go land you like 25 homers. Perfectly fine at corner infield. That's a perfectly fine player.
Yep, absolutely. And head over to fantasyalarm.com. Check out Matt's prospect report. A lot of good information in there, so make sure you go check that out over at fantasyalarm.com. Matt, excuse me, something I wanted to add in here, just a fun little talking point here. So it's the superb and super significant statistic of the week. I got two for you here.
Well, you got two because I got one too.
Okay, we got three then. Actually, one's more of a trivia question, but anyway, no surprise. We talked about Shohei Ohtani a good bit, but obviously first player ever to hit 40 home runs and win 10 games as a pitcher in a season. He's 1 home run away from being the first to hit 45 home runs and win 10 games in a season, and he's 6 away from being the first to hit 50 home runs and win 10 games in a season. If he hits the rest of the way, I think he's got a very legitimate chance of getting to 50. I think it's a virtual guarantee he gets to 45, considering he just has to run into one more ball over the last handful of games here. If he plays and stays healthy the rest of the way, do you think he gets to 50 and 10?
Yes.
Okay. I agree with you there. And then my other superb and super significant statistic of the week, which is just disguised as a trivia question, really. Nolan Shanuel, obviously, he was brought up a mere what feels like 2 weeks after he was drafted up to the big league team. He was the first player brought up in the same year as they were drafted. As whom? Do you remember that particular pitcher?
He pitched for the Royals. He pitched in the College World Series that year, and then I believe he also pitched in the MLB World Series, if I'm not mistaken. Like, the Royals made the World Series the year they called him up, and then they traded him to, I think it was Cincinnati. It was one of the Ohio teams. I think it was Cincinnati that they traded him to. I say all that to say I'm blanking on his name, but I know who it is.
Yeah, that's the guy that I thought it was too, because I vaguely remember that being the case, but I think it was slightly different. The one that I had seen per the tweet, it was Garrett Crochet.
Oh, for the White Sox.
Yep, drafted in the 2020 June amateur draft and pitched in 2022, or excuse me, in 2020 in that year as well. So he was the first since then.
He was, but yeah, okay. So, but the Royals guy,
He must have
the
just
Royals
been.
guy is the first one to ever pitch in a College World Series and an MLB World Series in the same year, and I'm blanking on his name.
Yep. What's your superb stat of the week?
So I have two. One, the Yankees, who won on Wednesday and ended their 9-game losing streak. Had they lost, it would have been the first time since 1913 that the Yankees had a 10-game losing streak in a season.
Oof. Also, I think the name that you're thinking of is Brandon Finnegan.
There you go.
Yep. And also, he was drafted in June 2014.
No. Was it
Brandon?
Brandon
Royals.
Finnegan? Okay, yes.
And then went to Cincy. So you had that. Yep.
Then the second stat, and this is mind-blowing because these two people don't usually get put in the same sentence, but Babe Ruth had 476 home runs after Bob Barker was born. Bob Barker, who's still alive, was born in December of 1923. Babe Ruth had 476 home runs after Bob Barker was born.
Jeez. Well, there you go.
Do what you will with that information.
Absolutely. And then, of course, to wrap it up this week, weekend streamers and waiver wire preview. We'll roll through these quickly. Yep. It's a light streaming weekend. I'm going with Brandon Pfaadt, 64% owned on FanTrack, only 3% owned on ESPN. Since he is scary to go against, but they've been striking out a lot of late. And since Pfaadt has switched to basically just riding his fastball and sweeper for the majority of his arsenal, 2.96 ERA and a 107 whip in August. So take a look at Pfaadt if he's available in your league. Matt, what say you on the streaming market?
I'm going with a guy who's owned in 4% of Fantrax leagues. It's Pedro Avila. He's starting on Saturday against Milwaukee, who is bottom 5 in the league in ISO and in the bottom 3rd in the league in weighted runs created plus versus right-handed pitching over the last month. Avila's gone 4 2/3 twice this year, and in those games he's given up 5 hits, 1 earned, and 7 strikeouts in each. So that's my streamer, and we both have the same waiver wire ad.
Yeah. And I want to clarify let me go with that. Cole Reagans is the guy of the waiver wire, owned in only 12% of ESPN leagues, 59% of Fantrax. I'm going to amend my statistic quick. It was that Shanuel was the first since Garrett Crochet, not the second ever amendment.
Okay.
Put that in notes. But that'll do it for this week's episode. Head over to fantasyalarm.com if you're not an all-pro subscriber. Get your hands on our fantasy football draft guide, as fantasy football draft season is upon us. Give Matt a follow on X at the Selz Man. I'm at Colby R. Conway, and we'll see you next week with the next edition of the Fantasy Alarm Fantasy Baseball Podcast.